The music was soft, elegant, controlled, the kind of music that didn't demand attention, but owned the room anyway. Crystal chandeliers reflected golden light across the ballroom, bouncing off polished marble floors and perfectly arranged white roses. Every detail was precise, intentional, expensive, a wedding built to impress, and right on schedule. The doors opened. Sarah stepped in. Her heels touched the floor with quiet confidence, measured, steady, unshaken. Heads turned, not dramatically, not all at once, but one by one. Attention shifted. A woman near the aisle leaned toward her companion. "Isn't that?" "Yeah, that's her." Sarah didn't slow down, didn't react. Her gaze stayed forward, posture straight, expression calm. She had dressed for this moment with intention, not to compete, not to impress, but to remind herself. She was still standing, still whole, still in control. As she walked deeper into the venue, the whispers grew, low, careful, but not quiet enough. I heard she didn't know. No, she knew. She just still came. That's bold. That's not bold. That's something else. Sarah reached the center aisle, and that's when she saw him. Daniel stood at the altar, perfectly tailored suit, calm posture, the same composed presence he had always carried. The kind of man who never looked rushed, never looked uncertain. But right now, his eyes met hers, and something shifted. Just slightly, a flicker. It was quick, but it was there. Sarah noticed. Of course she did. She didn't stop walking, didn't break eye contact, not even for a second. Then, her gaze moved to the bride, and the world didn't stop. The music didn't cut. No one gasped. Everything continued exactly as it should, except for one thing. The truth, standing at that altar, her sister, dressed in white, holding the bouquet Sarah once described in detail, months ago, during a casual conversation that meant nothing at the time. Or so she thought. The bride smiled, soft, controlled, but her fingers tightened slightly around the flowers. Sarah caught that too. She stopped at the last row, didn't move closer, didn't sit immediately, just stood there for a moment. Long enough for the silence between glances to stretch. Daniel adjusted his cuffs slightly. A habit, one Sarah knew well. He only did that when something felt off. Good. Let it feel off. A man seated beside her cleared his throat quietly. "You're really here?" Sarah turned her head slightly. Her voice was calm. I was invited." The man hesitated. Still, most people wouldn't. She gave a small, polite smile. "I'm not most people." That ended the conversation. She took her seat, crossed her legs, folded her hands neatly in her lap, and faced forward, like a guest, like nothing was wrong, but everything was cut. "I'm marrying your sister." The words didn't echo, they didn't shake the room, they just existed. Flat, direct, delivered without hesitation. Sarah had been standing in her kitchen when Daniel said it. The scent of garlic and butter still hung in the air. A pan sat on the stove, untouched. For a moment, she thought she heard him wrong. So she asked, not emotionally, not loudly, just clearly, "Say that again." A pause, then the same calm tone. "I'm getting married." She swallowed once. "To who?" Another pause, shorter this time. Then, "To your sister." Silence. Not the kind that feels empty, the kind that presses down on your chest. Sarah didn't drop the phone, didn't yell, didn't cry. Her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the counter. That was it. Her body refused to react beyond that, because something deeper had already understood. The truth had landed. Clean, sharp, final. "Okay," she said. Just one word. No questions, no begging, no confusion. Daniel exhaled quietly on the other end. "I thought you'd react differently." Sarah looked at the stove, then at her reflection in the microwave door. "I did," she replied. "You just didn't notice." She ended the call, not dramatically, just decisively. Moments flashed, not in chaos, but in sequence, clear, precise. Their first dinner, his quiet smile, the way he always showed up early, the way he remembered small things, the way she trusted him. Then, her events, brides laughing, couples holding hands, promises exchanged under soft lighting, love in all its forms. She had built those moments for others, carefully, thoughtfully, believing in them. Then, the invitation, cream-colored paper, elegant script, her name written perfectly. She had stared at it for a long time, then flipped it over, and saw the note, "We hope you can attend." Hope, interesting word. Back in the present, the officiant began speaking, words about love, commitment, union. Sarah listened, not because she believed it, but because she understood something now. Clarity had replaced confusion, and clarity was powerful. Her gaze returned to Daniel. He looked composed again, controlled, but not untouched. Not anymore. Good. Let him feel it. Not her pain, but her presence, because that was enough. Sarah leaned back slightly in her chair. Her voice was low, almost reflective. "If you think this is where I broke." She paused. A faint smile touched her lips. "You don't know me yet. Welcome plus channel introduction. Welcome to Mr. Steve Stories, where everyday moments turn into powerful, unforgettable tales. If you're joining us for the first time, we're thrilled to have you here. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss the stories that move hearts, spark imagination, and remind us what truly matters. Let's dive into today's story." The music continued. The ceremony moved forward, and Sarah sat there, not as a victim, not as a mistake, but as something far more dangerous. Someone who had just lost everything, and was still standing. Brooklyn gave Sarah room to breathe. Not much, just enough. Enough to walk home after a long event with her heels in one hand and her work bag on her shoulder. Enough to stop at the corner store for lemons and fresh herbs. Enough to sit by her apartment window at night, eating late dinner with soft jazz playing low, letting the city make noise somewhere far from her peace. Her apartment reflected her the way a good mirror should. Warm colors, clean surfaces, framed prints with meaning instead of price tags, plants by the window, scented candles she only lit when she had earned rest. Nothing in the place begged for attention, but everything belonged. She liked it that way. That Thursday evening, she stood in her kitchen tasting a sauce from a wooden spoon when her phone buzzed on the counter. A client. She tapped speaker and kept stirring. "Please tell me you're calling with good news," Sarah said. A nervous female voice answered, "I think I hate the flowers." Sarah smiled, without looking at the phone. "You don't hate the flowers." "I do." "No, you hate the pressure. The flowers are just standing there, catching blame." A beat of silence, then a laugh. "Why do you always do that?" "Do what?" "Say the exact thing I don't want to hear, then make me feel better about it." Sarah tasted the sauce again, because that is a premium service. The woman laughed harder this time. "Okay," Sarah said, lowering the heat. "Tell me the truth. What changed?" "My future in-laws are coming to dinner tomorrow, and now I think everything has to be bigger, more impressive." "Do you want impressive?" Sarah asked. "Or do you want honest?" The answer came slowly. "Honest. Then keep the flowers." "You really think so?" "I know so. People remember how a room feels, not whether the centerpieces looked expensive enough to scare them." Another short silence. Then, "I'm so glad I hired you." Sarah grinned. "I know. Get some sleep. And stop picking fights with innocent roses." When the call ended, she set the spoon down and shook her head with a quiet smile. That was Sarah's gift. People came to her for event planning and left feeling steadier than when they arrived. She understood timing, mood, space, but more than that, she understood people, their fears, their pride, their need to feel seen without being exposed. That was why her business kept growing, not because she shouted the loudest, because she paid attention. 2 days later, she was at a private engagement dinner in Manhattan, adjusting candles on a long table dressed in cream linen and gold accents. The venue overlooked the city through tall glass windows, and the sunset was turning everything bronze. A server approached her. "The host wants to move the toast up by 15 minutes. Sarah looked at the room once, already calculating. That throws off dinner service. He says, one of the guests has to leave early. She nodded. Fine. Tell the kitchen I'm shifting the first course. And ask the musicians to hold the second set until after dessert. The server blinked. That fast? Sarah fixed one candle by half an inch. Panic wastes time. Go. He hurried off. She checked the place settings one last time when she heard a male voice behind her. You run a room like a general. Sarah turned. That was the first time she saw Daniel. He stood a few feet away in a dark suit that looked expensive, without trying too hard. Tall, composed, hands relaxed at his sides, no forced smile, no need to impress. He looked like the kind of man who entered places expecting them to make sense. His eyes moved once across the room, then settled back on her. Sarah answered, A general gets more credit. I'm the one making sure people don't cry in the restroom before the appetizers arrive. A faint smile touched his mouth. That happens often? More than you rich people like to admit. That smile deepened just enough to count. I'll keep that in mind, he said. She folded her arms loosely. Are you one of the rich people I should worry about? I'm trying not to be. That sounds like a yes. He glanced at the table, then back at her. I'm here for the host. Family or business? Both. Dangerous combination. I've been told. Sarah picked up a menu card and straightened it. Then try not to create extra work for me tonight. He studied her for a second, like he was filing something away. Do I seem like someone who creates extra work? Yes. That pulled a quiet laugh from him. It was small, brief, controlled. Still, it changed his face. Sarah noticed that too. The room began filling. Guests arrived in polished shoes and expensive perfume, carrying themselves with the confidence of people used to being welcomed. Sarah moved among them with practiced ease, guiding timing, smoothing tension, fixing little problems before they had time to become real ones. Half an hour later, while she checked the seating flow near the entrance, Daniel appeared again. Do you ever stop moving? He asked. She looked at him. Do you ever stop observing? Depends on what I'm looking at. Sarah gave him a look. That line probably works on quieter women. It wasn't a line. That makes it slightly better. He held her gaze. What does make an impression on you? She adjusted the strap on her work bag. Consistency, not charm? Charm is easy. Money? I work around money all week. It's not that exciting. Big promises? She smiled once. Those are usually a warning sign. For the first time, Daniel looked openly interested, not entertained, interested. What about honesty? He asked. Sarah tilted her head. Actual honesty, or the version people perform when they want credit for it? He answered without delay. Actual. That, she said, is rare enough to matter. Someone across the room called for her. She turned, answered quickly, then looked back at Daniel. I have to save dessert from being served too early. He stepped slightly aside to clear her path. Of course. She started walking off, then paused. Try the sea bass, she said. It's the smartest decision in the room. He watched her with that same contained expression. And if I don't like fish? Then I question your judgment. By the time the evening ended, he had found 3 reasons to speak to her. The first was about the food. The sea bass was excellent. I know. The potatoes were better. That is an aggressive opinion. The second was about the music. You changed the playlist after the toast. You noticed? The room relaxed. Sarah lifted one brow. Careful. Keep paying attention like that, and I'll assume there's depth there. And the third reason? He asked. She looked at him, amused now. He answered for himself. I wanted to ask if you'd have dinner with me. Sarah did not respond immediately. She had been asked out before, plenty of times, usually by men who mistook confidence for easy access, or by men who liked the idea of her more than the reality. Daniel didn't seem like either. That didn't mean she trusted it. Dinner, she said. That's direct. I prefer direct. Do you? Yes. She studied him for a moment. And what exactly makes you think I'll say yes? His answer came calm and even. You won't say yes because I asked. You'll say yes if you think I mean it. Sarah looked at him for one full second longer. Then she smiled. Well, she said, lifting her coat from the back of a chair. "That was your best sentence tonight. So that's a maybe? That's a date and time pending review." His mouth shifted again with that quiet, almost smile. "I can work with that." She stepped closer, just enough to make the next line land. "Be on time." Then she walked away. 3 nights later, he was early. Sarah noticed before she even reached the restaurant door. He was standing outside, hands in his coat pockets, looking toward the street like a man who did not pace because he had no need to. When he saw her, he straightened slightly. "You're 4 minutes early," she said. "You checked?" "I always check." A faint warmth entered his voice. "Good evening, Sarah." She stopped in front of him, taking him in once. Calm, clean-cut, careful, controlled in a way that should have felt cold. But somehow, with her, it didn't. "Good evening, Daniel," she replied. And that was how it began. Not with fireworks, not with a dramatic sweep, with timing, with attention, with 2 people from different worlds standing on a New York sidewalk, looking at each other like they had both just noticed something worth slowing down for. The doors opened slowly, not rushed, not dramatic, just enough for attention to shift. Sarah stepped in. The room didn't stop, but it changed, a quiet shift in energy. People noticed. They always did when someone walked in without trying to be seen. Her heels touched the polished floor with steady rhythm. No hesitation, no uncertainty, just control. A woman near the aisle leaned toward her partner. "That's her, right?" The man nodded once. "Yeah." Sarah kept walking. No reaction, no glance in their direction. She had long mastered the art of hearing without responding. The ballroom was everything she would have designed herself, if she were still the one in control of it. Soft white arrangements, clean layout, warm lighting that made everyone look slightly better than they actually felt. Elegant, intentional, familiar. She knew this kind of room. She built rooms like this for a living. She created moments people would remember long after the night ended. And yet, tonight, she was just a guest. Or at least, that's what the invitation said. Her gaze moved forward and found him, Daniel, standing at the altar like a man who had never been uncertain a day in his life. Tailored suit, calm expression, shoulders relaxed. Exactly how she remembered him. Exactly how he always presented himself. Reliable, controlled, predictable, except for one thing. His eyes met hers, and for the first time since she had ever known him, something in him shifted. It was small. Most people would have missed it. Sarah didn't. She never missed anything that mattered. Good. Let him feel it. Then, her gaze moved to the bride, and there it was. The truth, standing in white, holding flowers. Sarah had once described casually during a conversation that felt harmless at the time. Her sister, the bride's lips curved into a smile, polished, controlled, but her fingers tightened slightly around the bouquet. Sarah noticed that too. She stopped at the last row, not closer, not further, just enough distance to observe everything clearly. A man sitting nearby shifted uncomfortably. "You actually came." Sarah turned slightly. "I was invited. That doesn't mean you had to show up." She gave a small, calm smile. "I don't avoid things that belong to me." The man had no response to that. She sat down, crossed her legs, hands resting neatly in her lap. Composed, not because she felt fine, but because she had decided, long before stepping into this room, that she would not give them the version of her they expected. Life will humble you. Sarah said it often, usually with a smile, usually followed by something that made people laugh. But at least let it find you looking good. That line had become her signature, not because it sounded clever, because it was true. Sarah didn't come from a world like this ballroom. She built herself from something much more grounded, a tight community where people showed up for each other, whether they felt like it or not, where Sunday dinners weren't optional, where laughter filled spaces that money couldn't fix, where strength wasn't announced, it was expected. That foundation stayed with her, even here, even now, especially now. Brooklyn had taught her how to balance everything else. Her apartment wasn't large, but it carried presence. Plants by the window, clean surfaces, warm lighting, The kind of space that felt lived in, not displayed. Every detail intentional, every item placed with purpose. It smelled like home. Not a staged version of it, a real one. That's how she approached her work too. Sarah wasn't the kind of event planner who chased attention. She didn't build loud events. She built meaningful ones. Small weddings, private celebrations, engagement dinners, where people actually talked instead of performing happiness. And that's why people trusted her. Not because she promised perfection, because she understood emotion. "Tell me the truth," Sarah said, holding her phone between shoulder and ear while adjusting a centerpiece. "I think I hate everything," the voice on the other end replied. Sarah smiled slightly. "No, you don't." "I do. You're overwhelmed. That's different." A pause, then a small laugh. "How do you always know?" "Because you hired me to know." Another pause. Then, "Okay, maybe I don't hate everything." "Good," Sarah said. "Now, tell me what actually changed." "My future in-laws are coming tomorrow, and suddenly, nothing feels good enough." Sarah adjusted the arrangement slightly. "Do you want to impress them? Or do you want to feel comfortable in your own event?" "Comfortable. Then stop trying to impress people who already decided who you are." Silence, then a quiet, "You're right." "I know," Sarah said gently. "Stick with the original plan. It fits you better." When the call ended, she set the phone down and stepped back to observe the room. Balanced, clean, right. That's what she brought into people's lives. Clarity and control. Back in the wedding venue, Sarah sat still, watching the ceremony begin. The officiant spoke, words about love, commitment, promises. Sarah listened, not because she believed what was being said, but because she understood something now. She had spent years building moments like this for other people, helping them step into a future they believed in. And now, she was sitting inside one that had been built without her, using pieces of her own life, her work, her trust, her love. And yet, she didn't break, she didn't move, she didn't give them the reaction they expected, because something had already changed inside her before she walked through those doors. Something quiet, something firm, something final. Sarah leaned back slightly, her voice low, almost reflective. "If you think this is where I broke." A pause, a faint smile. "You don't know me yet." Welcome to Mr. Steve's Stories, where everyday moments turn into powerful, unforgettable tales. If you're joining us for the first time, we're thrilled to have you here. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss the stories that move hearts, spark imagination, and remind us what truly matters. Let's dive into today's story. The ceremony continued. The music played, the room watched, and Sarah sat there calmly, not as someone defeated, but as someone who had just realized everything she thought she lost was about to lead her somewhere no one in that room could see yet. Before that wedding, before the silence, the invitation, the shift, there was a beginning that felt steady, not loud, not overwhelming, just right. It started with work. It always did for Sarah. She was at a private engagement dinner, one of her more refined setups. Not large, not crowded, just the kind of space where every detail mattered. Soft lighting, neutral tones, a long table placed near the windows, overlooking the city skyline, everything positioned with intention. Sarah moved through the room with quiet efficiency, adjusting placements, checking timing, correcting small errors before they became noticeable. A server approached her. "They want to move the toast earlier." Sarah didn't look up immediately. "By how much?" 15 minutes. "That interrupts dinner flow." "They said it's important." Sarah finally looked at him. Everything feels important when people are nervous. He hesitated. She exhaled lightly. "Fine. Tell the kitchen to adjust the first course and delay the music set until after dessert." The server blinked. "Already handled?" "Almost," she said. "Now go." He left quickly. Sarah turned back to the table, straightening a glass by half an inch. That's when she heard his voice. "You fix problems before they exist." She turned and saw him, Daniel, standing just behind her. Calm, still, watching, Not the kind of man who interrupted a room. The kind who studied it first. Sarah faced him fully. I prevent them, she corrected. A slight pause, then he nodded. That explains the room. She glanced around once. It explains the people. The room just follows. He studied her a second longer than necessary. You're good at this. I know. That caught him slightly off guard, not offended, interested. Most people softened their confidence. Sarah didn't. You always answer like that? He asked. Only when it's true. A faint shift at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. The room began filling with guests. Sarah moved back into her rhythm, coordinating timing, managing transitions, keeping everything seamless. But she noticed him again, not moving much. Just watching. Observing details other people ignored. That stood out. Later, as she checked the final seating placements, he approached her again. You don't seem stressed, he said. I don't get paid to be stressed. What do you get paid for? She looked at him. Control. He nodded once. That's rare. So is honesty, she replied. That landed. He adjusted his sleeve slightly. And which one do you prefer? Control, she said. Why? Because honesty without control creates problems. And control without honesty, she held his gaze, creates people like you. That time, he smiled. Fully, small, but real. As the night progressed, he found his way back to her more than once. Not in a way that felt forced. Not in a way that demanded attention. Just consistently. That's what she noticed. Not charm, not effort. Consistency. Near the end of the event, he approached her while she reviewed the final bill adjustments. You changed the order of the evening, he said. Yes. The room felt better after. That was the goal. He leaned slightly against the table. You pay attention to people more than things. Things don't react, she said. People do, and that's where mistakes happen. He nodded slowly. Then, I'd like to take you to dinner. Direct, no hesitation. Sarah didn't answer immediately. She looked at him the same way she evaluated everything else. Carefully. Dinner, she repeated. Yes. That's simple. I prefer simple. She tilted her head slightly. Simple is usually where people hide complications. He didn't look away. Not this time. Sarah watched him for a moment longer, then picked up her bag. Be on time, she said. That was her answer. 3 nights later. He was early. Sarah noticed before she even stepped fully into view. He stood outside the restaurant, hands in his coat pockets, posture relaxed but alert, not distracted, not impatient, just waiting. When he saw her, he straightened slightly. You're early, she said. You're observant. I'm consistent. He nodded once. I respect that. She stopped in front of him. You should. It's expensive. That pulled a quiet laugh from him. They entered together. Dinner didn't feel like an interview. It didn't feel like performance. That's what made it different. Most conversations followed patterns. Predictable questions. Predictable answers. This didn't. You don't talk about yourself much, Sarah said at one point. He cut into his food calmly. I talk when it matters. And does this matter? He looked at her. Yes. She leaned back slightly. Then talk. A pause. Then, I run multiple businesses. Specific, she said dryly. Structured, he corrected. You're careful. I'm precise. Sarah nodded slowly. That's another word for it. He studied her. You're not easy to impress. No, she said. Why? Because I've seen what people look like when they're pretending. And me? She held his gaze. You're not pretending, she said. That was the first real shift between them. Not attraction, recognition. From that night, things moved forward. Not rushed, not forced. Steady. He showed up. Every time. On time. With attention. With presence. And Sarah responded the only way she knew how. Honestly. She let him in gradually. Into her space. Into her routine. Into her life. Late evenings became familiar. Shared meals. Quiet conversations. Comfortable silence that didn't need to be filled. One night, she sat across from him, watching him scroll through something on his phone. You always work this late? She asked. Sometimes or always. He looked up. Does it matter? It does if I'm part of your time. That made him pause. Then he set the phone down. It matters, he said. She nodded once. Good. That's how it built. Not through big moments. Through small, consistent ones. The kind that feel safe. The kind that make you stop questioning things. And that was where the danger began. Because when something feels that stable, you don't look for cracks. It didn't break all at once. It shifted, quietly, the way something changes just enough that you feel it. But can't point to it yet. At first, Daniel still showed up. Still called. Still asked about her day. On the surface, nothing was wrong. But Sarah noticed something else. The space between things. One evening, she was setting plates on her dining table while Daniel stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, measured. Handle it, he said. A pause. Then quieter. No. Not like that. Sarah didn't turn immediately. She placed the last plate down, wiped her hands slowly, then looked at him. He ended the call the moment he noticed. Too quickly. You good? She asked. Yeah, he replied. What was that? Work. Sarah nodded once, not convinced, but not pushing. Yet, days later, she noticed it again. They were sitting on the couch, television playing low. Daniel's phone lit up. He glanced at it, turned it over, screen down. Sarah didn't look at the phone. She looked at him. Private now? She asked, lightly. He exhaled through his nose. It's nothing. That's not what I asked. He leaned back. It's work. All of it? A short pause. Then, most of it. Sarah nodded slowly. That answer is doing a lot of work for you. He didn't respond. That was the first time silence felt different, not comfortable, not shared, held. Another week passed. He canceled dinner, last minute. I'll make it up to you, he said over the phone. Sarah leaned against her kitchen counter. You don't need to make it up. Just don't cancel next time. I said something came up, and I said, I understand. A pause. Then she added, calm but clear. I just don't like patterns I didn't agree to. He didn't answer that directly. Tomorrow? He asked. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow came. He was late. Not by much. 10 minutes, but enough. Sarah was standing outside the restaurant when he arrived. You're late, she said. I know. What happened? Work. Again. She studied him. You've been saying that a lot. It's true. That doesn't make it enough. He looked at her, jaw tight for a second. You want details? I want honesty. That is honesty. Sarah held his gaze. No, she said quietly. That's a version of it. He exhaled sharply. Sarah, I'm here now. That's not the point. Then what is? She didn't raise her voice. Didn't step closer. Didn't create a scene. That you used to be here before I had to ask questions. That landed. He looked away first. And Sarah noticed that too. They went inside. Dinner continued. But something had changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. Conversation felt shorter. Pauses lasted longer. Eye contact didn't hold the same way. After that night, Daniel adjusted. Not by opening up. By managing perception. He became more careful. More precise. He showed up on time again. Called regularly, but something behind it felt controlled, like he was maintaining balance instead of being present in it. One Tuesday afternoon, Sarah was finalizing details for a small wedding setup. White linens, minimalist decor, soft arrangements, the kind she preferred, the kind that focused on meaning instead of display. Her phone rang. Daniel. She answered immediately. Hey, she said. His voice came through calm. Too calm. I need to tell you something. Sarah paused. Not because of fear, because of recognition. She had heard that tone before, not from him, from life. It was the tone things used right before they changed. What is it? She asked. Silence. Brief. Measured. Then. I'm getting married. Sarah didn't speak. Her grip tightened slightly around the edge of the table. Her mind didn't race, it slowed. Everything became clearer. sharper. She asked one question. To who? A pause. Then, to your sister. The room didn't move. The air didn't shift. Nothing dramatic happened. But everything changed. Sarah stood still, phone against her ear, eyes focused on the arrangement in front of her that she no longer saw. On the other end, Daniel breathed. Steady, normal. That bothered her more than the words. How long? She asked. His answer came low. Long enough. Sarah closed her eyes once, not to cry, to process, to stabilize. He started to say her name. Sarah. No. Her voice cut through clean. Not loud, not emotional. Final. He stopped. You don't get to say my name like this, she said. Silence. Then he tried again. I thought telling you myself was better? She let out a small breath. Not quite a laugh. Better for who? He had no answer. Of course he didn't. Sarah turned slightly. Her reflection caught in a glass panel nearby. Composed, still, unbroken. That almost surprised her. Not because she felt fine. Because her body had already decided something before her mind caught up. I'm getting married, he had said. Not, I'm sorry. Not I made a mistake. Just a decision. A replacement. A conclusion he had reached without her. Okay, she said. The words settled between them. Daniel shifted on the other end. Okay? Yes. That's it? Sarah looked directly at her reflection now. At the woman who had trusted him without dividing it into parts. At the woman he assumed would fall apart in response. Her voice was steady, clear, controlled. I didn't lose them, she said. A pause. They lost me. She ended the call, set the phone down, and stood there for a moment longer, not moving, not reacting, just understanding. Later that night, back in her apartment, the city lights filtered through her window, casting a soft glow across the room. No music, no distractions, just silence. Sarah stood in front of her mirror, looked at herself fully, not quickly, not briefly, carefully, as if seeing herself for the first time in years, and for the first time since everything shifted. She spoke again, quietly, not out of anger, not out of pain, but out of truth. I didn't lose them. A small pause. They lost me, and this time, it didn't sound like a reaction. It sounded like a decision. The apartment was quiet, not peaceful, just quiet. Sarah stood where she had ended the call. The phone rested on the table beside her, the same place she had set it down minutes ago, or maybe longer. Time didn't feel clear right now. She moved first, not dramatically, just enough to break stillness. She walked to the kitchen, turned off the light she didn't remember switching on, then turned it back on, stared at the switch, pressed it again, off, on, then stopped. Her phone buzzed. She didn't look at it. It buzzed again. Still nothing. Finally, she walked back to the table, picked it up, screen lit. Daniel. Calling. She let it ring, watched it, listened to it. Then it stopped. A message followed immediately. We need to talk. She read it once, then placed the phone face down. A few seconds later, it buzzed again. Another message. Please don't do this. Sarah sat down slowly, pulled the chair in without sound, looked at the table in front of her. Empty, clean, still. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she picked it up. Not to answer, to turn it off. The screen went dark, and with it, so did the noise attached to him. The silence that followed felt different, not heavy, not crushing, just clear. She stood, walked to the sink, ran water into a glass, watched it fill, drank half, set it down. Her reflection caught faintly in the window above the sink. City lights behind her, face steady, eyes focused. She expected something else. Tears, anger, a reaction loud enough to match what had just happened. But none of it came. Instead, her mind started organizing. She walked to the living room, picked up her laptop, opened it, paused, closed it again. Not because she couldn't work, because she wouldn't. Not tonight. Her phone remained off. She left it that way. The next morning came without ceremony. No alarm, no rush. Just light pushing through her curtains. Sarah sat up slowly, looked at the clock, then at the empty space beside her. She got out of bed, walked to the bathroom, turned on the shower, waited, then stepped in. Water ran over her shoulders. Warm, consistent. She stood there longer than usual, not thinking, not forcing anything, just letting time pass through her instead of against her. When she stepped out, she moved with intention, not fast, not slow, just deliberate. Clothes selected, hair done, face clean, no sign of disruption. Her phone remained off on the table. She didn't touch it. By midday, she was back at work. Are we still on schedule? A client asked over the phone. Sarah adjusted a document on her laptop. Yes. You sound calm. I am. I thought you'd be stressed with everything coming up. I don't get paid to panic. A small laugh came through the line. That's why I hired you. Sarah typed a quick note. And that's why we're still on schedule. The call ended. She leaned back slightly in her chair, looked around her apartment. Everything exactly where she left it. Nothing changed. Except everything had. Her phone turned on that afternoon, not because she wanted to hear from him, because she chose when to deal with things, not the other way around. Messages filled the screen. Daniel. Call logs. Texts. Voicemails. She didn't open any of them, not yet. Instead, she opened her calendar, reviewed her week, adjusted 2 appointments, confirmed a booking, sent a message to a vendor. Control. That was where she stayed. Later that evening, her phone rang again. Daniel. This time she answered. Sarah. No. Her voice stopped him immediately. A pause, then quieter. I just want to explain. She walked to the window, looked out at the city. Cars moving, people walking, life continuing without permission. There's nothing to explain, she said. There is no. A beat. You made a decision. Silence. Then he said, you deserve to hear. I heard enough. Her tone didn't rise, didn't crack. It stayed exactly where it was. You're marrying my sister, she continued. That's the part that matters. He exhaled. It's complicated. Sarah shook her head slightly. No, she said. It's simple. Another pause. Then, you're walking away? Sarah's answer came without delay. No, that caught him. I'm stepping back, she clarified. Those are different things. He didn't respond immediately. But for the first time, he didn't have control of the conversation. I'll call you later, he said. No, Sarah replied. A pause. You don't call me anymore. Silence. Then, okay. The line went dead. Sarah lowered the phone slowly, set it down beside her. No anger followed. No collapse. Just a shift. Not in emotion. In position. She wasn't reacting anymore. She was deciding, and that was where everything truly changed. 3 days passed. No calls from Sarah. No responses beyond what was necessary for work. Everything in her life moved forward, except anything connected to Daniel. That stayed. Paused. She didn't block him, didn't delete his messages, didn't remove anything. She just stopped engaging. And somehow, that silence said more than any argument could have. Late afternoon, Sarah was at her dining table, reviewing a vendor contract, when a knock came at her door. Firm, not rushed, not hesitant. She looked up, checked the time. No deliveries scheduled, no client visits. Another knock. Sarah stood, walked to the door, opened it halfway. A man stood there, holding a package. Neutral expression. Professional, delivery, he said. Sarah didn't move immediately. I didn't order anything. It's already paid for. That wasn't comforting. From who? She asked. He checked the label briefly. No name listed. Sarah studied the package. Cream-colored envelope. Thick. Structured. Familiar in a way she didn't like. She took it. Thank you. The door closed. For a moment, she just stood there, envelope in hand, not opening it, not moving. Then she walked back to the table, placed it down carefully, sat across from it. She already knew what it was. Her body knew before her mind needed confirmation. Still, she opened it. Slowly, deliberately. The paper inside was smooth, expensive, designed to impress. She unfolded it. Read the first line, and there it was, a wedding invitation. Daniel's name, her sister's name, printed clean, centered, confident, like nothing about it was wrong. Sarah didn't flinch, didn't look away. She kept reading. Date, time, location, every detail laid out like something meant to be celebrated. Then she reached the bottom, a handwritten note. Simple, short, precise. We hope you can attend. Sarah stared at that line longer than anything else on the page. Hope. She leaned back slowly in her chair, the invitation still in her hand. A small breath escaped her. Not heavy, not emotional, just acknowledgement. They want me there, she said quietly. She set the invitation down in front of her, looked at it again. Not as paper, not as design, but as intention. They want me to watch. The words didn't come with anger. They came with clarity. She stood, walked to the kitchen, opened a drawer, closed it again, without taking anything. Her movement wasn't restless. It was controlled, measured. She returned to the table, picked up the invitation again, ran her fingers lightly across the edge of the paper. You planned this carefully, she said under her breath. Not just the wedding, the message behind it. Because this wasn't just an invitation. It was a statement. We moved on, without you, and now, we want you to see it. Sarah exhaled slowly. Her phone buzzed. She didn't need to check. She knew. Still. She picked it up. Daniel. Message. Did you get it? Sarah looked at the screen, then at the invitation, then back at the screen. She typed, paused, deleted it, typed again, yes. The reply came almost immediately. We should talk. Sarah stared at that message for a second, then typed again, no. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, I don't want this to be like this. Sarah's expression didn't change. She typed, it already is. She set the phone down, screen facing up this time. No need to hide from it. Another message came. You don't understand everything. Sarah read it once, then spoke aloud, quietly. I understand enough. She didn't reply. Minutes passed. Then the phone rang. She let it ring, watched it, listened to it. Then it stopped. No voicemail followed. That told her something. He didn't know what to say. Good. Sarah picked up the invitation again, folded it neatly, placed it back inside the envelope. Then she stood, walked to her shelf, placed it there. Not hidden, not displayed, just present, a reminder. She stepped back, looked at it once more. You want me there, she said quietly. A pause. Fine. Her tone didn't rise, didn't sharpen. It settled, because something had shifted again. Not in emotion, in understanding. This wasn't about pain anymore. It was about position, and Sarah had just realized something important. If they wanted her to watch, then they hadn't understood her at all. That was their mistake, and she would let them make it. Proceed to Part 3, Chapter 2, Part 3. The decision to attend. Approximately 1,070 words, or direct continuation, or tight pacing, or no repetition, or strict chronological flow. The invitation stayed on the shelf for 2 days. Sarah passed it more than once. On her way to the kitchen, on her way to the door, on her way back from work, with her bag slipping off one shoulder and her mind still half on floral counts, rental confirmations, and timing sheets. She never touched it. Not again. But she saw it. And every time she saw it, the same thought returned with sharper edges. Not they're getting married. Not even he chose her. It was something colder, something cleaner. They wanted an audience. That was the part that stayed with her. The ceremony itself could have happened without her knowledge. Quietly, efficiently, cruelly, yes, but privately. Instead, they sent paper, heavy paper, fine print, formal wording, a handwritten note at the bottom, as if politeness could soften insult. It wasn't a courtesy, it was a performance, and they wanted her in the room. On the third evening, Sarah stood in front of her closet in a robe, arms folded, looking at rows of clothes the way she looked at event spaces before a setup. Not emotionally, Strategically, her bedroom was quiet. The city hummed beyond the window. A passing siren faded somewhere far off. The lamp on her dresser cast a soft circle of light across the carpet. She reached for a black dress, held it up, considered it, then put it back. No, she said to herself. Black would make the wrong statement. Too obvious, too dramatic, too close to grief. She moved past it. Her fingers slid across fabric. Silk, structured cotton, soft knits, tailored pieces she wore to meetings when she wanted to be taken seriously before she spoke. She pulled out a cream dress, looked at it. Also, no, too soft, too forgiving. She hung it back carefully. Then she stepped away from the closet and sat on the edge of her bed. This was not about looking beautiful. She already knew how to do that. This was about message. The same way table placement could change the mood of a room. The same way lighting could soften tension or sharpen it. The same way a single flower choice could make an event feel personal or cold. Appearance was language, and Sarah had no intention of speaking the wrong one. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up. A message from Daniel. I know you're angry. Sarah looked at it. Expression unreadable. Then another message came. I never wanted to hurt you like this. She let out a small breath and set the phone back down. That sentence annoyed her more than she expected. Not because it was cruel, because it was lazy. He never wanted to hurt her like this. As if the method were the problem. As if betrayal had formatting options. She picked up the phone again and typed, That's not your decision to make. She sent it before she could overthink it. His reply came after a minute. Can we please talk before the wedding? Sarah stared at the words, then typed, You already said everything. She put the phone on silent and placed it face down. No more tonight. Her attention returned to the closet. This time, she moved with more certainty. She chose a dress that didn't ask for approval. Clean lines, precise fit, strong without trying too hard, elegant enough for the room they had built, but not selected to please it. Then came the shoes. She picked one pair, rejected it. Picked another, set it on the floor, looked at them from a distance, changed her mind again. Finally, she found the pair, steady heel, good posture, comfortable enough to stand in for hours if needed. That mattered, because she wasn't dressing for entrance, she was dressing for endurance. She laid everything out across the bed and stepped back. For the first time since the call, something close to calm moved through her. Not relief, not peace, readiness. The next morning, she was in her kitchen making tea when her phone rang again. Daniel. She watched it ring twice before answering. What? She said. A pause met her on the other side. He was not used to that tone from her. I just wanted to hear your voice, he said. Sarah gave a humorless smile. That's new. Sarah. No. You don't get that version of me right now. He went quiet. Then, carefully. Are you coming? There it was. Not apology. Not explanation. Logistics. She took her tea to the window and looked out over the street below. People walked with grocery bags. A cyclist cut through traffic. A woman in a bright coat argued into a headset while dragging a small suitcase behind her. Life continued with no interest in private heartbreak. Why do you care? Sarah asked. Another pause. Because I'd rather know than guess. She nodded once, even though he couldn't see her. That was honest, at least. Not kind, but honest. You want certainty, she said. Yes. Sarah took a sip of tea, warm, slightly too strong. She drank it anyway. Then she asked the question that had been sitting quietly in her for days. Did she want me there? He didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower. We both agreed it was better to be respectful. Sarah almost laughed. Respectful. That word had become unrecognizable. She turned from the window and leaned one hand against the counter. Sending me an invitation to watch you marry my sister is not respect. I know this is hard. That's not what I said. He inhaled slowly. Then tell me what to say. Sarah's eyes moved to the shelf in the living room, where the invitation still sat inside its envelope. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, with startling clarity, She understood something that had been forming all week. If she stayed home, they would imagine her broken. If she refused to answer, they would fill the silence with whatever story helped them sleep. If she disappeared, they would call it dignity and move on. No. She had spent too much of her life helping people frame moments correctly to let them frame this one without her. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. You don't need to say anything. Then what do you want? That answer came fast. I want to see it. He fell silent, not because he didn't hear her, because now he had. Sarah continued, each word measured. I want to see how you stand there. I want to see how she looks at me. I want to see what kind of room you built for this. Sarah. No. You asked if I'm coming. She set her cup down, her spine straightened as if the decision had taken physical form inside her, and in a way, it had. This was no longer about heartbreak. It was about witness, not passive witness, not helpless witness, intentional witness. She was not going there to plead, to fight, or to fall apart in expensive lighting. She was going to observe, to understand, to let them look directly at what they had tried to erase. Her voice dropped, calm and final. I'll be there. For a moment, Daniel said nothing. Then, quietly, okay. No relief in his voice, no victory. Good, he should sit with that. Sarah ended the call and stood still in the center of her kitchen. Then she walked to the living room, took the invitation from the shelf, opened it once more, and read the details carefully from top to bottom. Date, time, venue, everything exactly where it should be. She folded it again and returned it to the envelope. But this time, when she set it down, it was no longer a wound. It was a plan. She looked toward her bedroom, where the outfit waited across the bed, then back at the envelope, and finally at her own reflection in the dark screen of the television. Not a victim, not an afterthought, not someone arriving to ask why, someone arriving to see, someone arriving prepared, someone who now understood that the room they had invited her into might become the room where everything changed. The car slowed to a stop. Sarah didn't rush to open the door. She sat for a second, looking through the window. The venue stood ahead, tall, polished, lit with intention. Glass panels reflected the city lights, and a line of luxury cars curved along the entrance like part of the design. Everything about it said the same thing. Carefully chosen, carefully planned. She stepped out. The air was cooler than she expected. A slight breeze caught the edge of her dress, then settled. She adjusted nothing, didn't check her reflection, didn't hesitate. Her heels touched the pavement with steady rhythm as she moved toward the entrance. Two attendants stood by the door. One of them looked at her, then at the guest list in his hand. A pause. Recognition. You're on the list, he said. Sarah met his eyes briefly. I know. He stepped aside quickly. Of course. Welcome. She walked past him without slowing. Inside, the room opened wide. Light filled the space. Not harsh, not dim. Balanced. White florals. Clean lines. Gold accents placed just enough to signal cost without overwhelming the room. Sarah's eyes moved once across the layout. She understood it immediately. Timing, flow, guest movement. She could see exactly how the night would unfold, and she could see where it would fail. That almost made her smile. Voices filled the space. Not loud, controlled, social. Then, they noticed her. It started near the entrance. A woman turned mid-conversation and stopped speaking. The man beside her followed her gaze. Then another, and another. The shift spread quietly, not announced, but undeniable. That's her. I thought she wouldn't come. She actually showed up? Is she serious right now? Sarah heard every word, ignored all of them. She walked forward. Not toward the front, not yet. Just enough to enter the room fully, to be seen clearly, to make sure there was no confusion. She was here. A man stepped slightly into her path, not blocking, just unsure. You're really attending? He asked. Sarah stopped, looked at him, not irritated, not amused, just direct. Yes. He hesitated. I don't base my decisions on what you think. He stepped aside immediately. Of course. She continued walking. The space adjusted around her. People shifted positions. Conversations lowered. Eyes followed, some openly, some carefully. Near the bar, two women leaned close together. This is uncomfortable. It's more than that. She's not reacting. That's what makes it worse. Sarah reached the edge of the main seating area. Rows of chairs arranged with precision. A clear aisle leading forward. And, at the end, she didn't move closer yet. Instead, she turned slightly, scanning the room. Not searching, assessing. A server approached her carefully. "Would you like something to drink?" Sarah looked at the tray. Then at him. "No. Water?" "I'm fine." He nodded quickly and stepped away. She took a seat at the last row. Not hidden, not prominent. Strategic. From here, she could see everything. And everyone could still see her. That mattered. The music shifted slightly. A signal. Guests began settling into their seats. The ceremony was about to start. Sarah crossed her legs, placed her hands neatly in her lap. Still, focused, a voice from behind her whispered, "I don't understand how she's sitting there like that." Another voice replied, "That's not strength. That's something else." Sarah didn't turn, didn't react. Then, movement at the front. Daniel stepped into position. Same posture, same controlled presence, same precision in the way he carried himself. But this time, he didn't look at the guests first. He looked at her. Direct, immediate. Sarah held his gaze. No smile, no expression change. Just presence. And for the first time, he looked unsettled. It was small, subtle, but it was there. He adjusted his cuff. Sarah noticed. Of course she did. Good. Let him feel that. Then, music changed again. The room shifted. Guests turned. The bride entered. White dress. Perfectly fitted. Carefully styled. Everything exactly as it should be. Sarah's eyes moved to her. Stayed there. The bride walked forward. Step by step. Measured. Confident. Until her eyes met Sarah's. Then, a flicker. Not fear. Not shock. Something quieter. Less controlled. Her grip on the bouquet tightened slightly. Sarah noticed that too. Good. Let her feel that. The bride continued walking, reached the front, took her place beside Daniel. The officiant stepped forward, smiled, began speaking. "Today, we gather." Sarah didn't listen to the words. She watched the people, Daniel's posture, the bride's breathing, the way both of them avoided looking at her again. That told her everything. They were aware, not comfortable, not confident. Aware, and that changed the balance. Because now, this wasn't just their moment. It was shared, and Sarah had just taken her place in it. "Today, we gather to witness." The officiant's voice carried smoothly across the room. Clear, practiced, controlled. Sarah sat still, her attention not on the speech, but on the space between the people standing at the front. Because that space told the truth. Daniel stood tall, posture unchanged, expression steady, but his focus wasn't where it should have been. Not fully. He looked at the officiant, then at the guests, then, briefly, at Sarah. Each time, it was quick, measured, like he was trying not to be seen doing it. Sarah didn't look away. Not once. The bride stood beside him, smile in place, chin lifted, every detail arranged to match the moment. But the timing of her breathing had changed, subtle, faster than it should have been. She adjusted her grip on the bouquet again. Too tight. The officiant continued. A commitment built on trust, partnership, and understanding. Sarah almost smiled, not because it was funny, because it was familiar. She had heard these words countless times, helped create the setting for them, watched people say them with conviction, with hope, with belief, and now, she watched them being said, here, in a room that carried a different truth entirely. The officiant turned slightly. Daniel. The room settled. Daniel faced forward fully now. No distractions, no shifts, just the role he was expected to play. "Do you take?" Sarah didn't need to hear the rest. She already knew the script. Still, she watched him. Not what he said, how he said it. His voice came out steady. clear, confident. "I do." A soft reaction moved through the room. Smiles, nods, approval. Sarah didn't move. Then, the officiant turned again. "And do you?" The bride answered without hesitation. "I do." But her voice wasn't as stable. "Not quite. Only someone paying attention would notice." Sarah noticed. Good, because this wasn't perfect. No matter how it looked. The officiant smiled. "Then let us proceed." Rings were brought forward. Daniel took the ring first, held it carefully, slid it onto her finger. Precise. Controlled. The bride did the same, but her hand shook slightly. Again. Small. But real. The officiant stepped back. "Please repeat after me." Daniel began. "I promise to stand with you." His voice remained even. "To support you." Measured. "To build a future." Clear. Then, a pause, barely noticeable, but Sarah caught it, just a fraction longer than necessary. His eyes shifted, toward her, then back. He finished the vow. The bride followed, her voice softer now, still controlled, but thinner. Sarah leaned back slightly in her chair, not relaxed, not disengaged, just settled, because now she understood something clearly. They weren't unaffected. Not him, not her, and that mattered more than anything else happening in the room. A whisper came from behind her. "He keeps looking at her." "I know. This is not right." Sarah didn't turn. Another voice joined in. "She shouldn't be here." No, they shouldn't have invited her. That was closer to the truth. The officiant raised his voice, slightly. "And now, by the power vested in me." The room shifted again. Expectation. Finality. The moment everyone had been waiting for. "I now pronounce you." Sarah's eyes remained fixed on Daniel. Husband and wife. Applause began. Soft at first, then louder. "Daniel, you may kiss." He turned toward the bride, paused, just briefly, then leaned in. The kiss happened. Short, appropriate, but not convincing. Sarah saw it clearly, and so did others. Applause continued, but the energy had changed. It wasn't as clean as it should have been. Something in the room felt unsettled. The bride stepped back first. Her smile returned quickly, too quickly. She looked out at the guests, avoided one direction. Sarah's direction. Daniel didn't. He looked at Sarah again, longer this time. No performance, no control, just awareness. Sarah met his gaze, and this time, she gave him something back. Not anger, not pain, understanding, and that was worse, because it told him. She saw everything. The ceremony ended. Guests began to stand, voices rising, movement returning. A man passed by Sarah and muttered under his breath, "This is uncomfortable." Another replied, "This is what happens when people make bad decisions." Sarah stood slowly, smoothed her dress once. No rush, no hesitation, because she wasn't leaving, not yet. She stepped into the aisle, and for the first time since the ceremony began, she moved forward, toward them, not aggressively, not emotionally, intentionally. And as she walked, the room noticed again, the same way it had when she entered. But this time, it wasn't curiosity, it was anticipation, because everyone understood one thing now. This wasn't over. The applause had barely faded when the room began to reorganize itself. Guests drifted toward the reception area in small groups, carrying champagne flutes and unfinished opinions. Soft music returned. Servers moved with trained efficiency. Conversations restarted, though not with the ease they had before. Too many people were still looking at Sarah. She felt it without needing to turn. She stepped aside from the aisle and stopped near a tall arrangement of white flowers placed beside a marble column. From there, she could see the reception doors, the altar, and most of the room without standing in anyone's way, or so it seemed. A few guests passed close enough to speak quietly, forgetting that low voices still travel when tension sharpens a room. "I told you this would go badly." "It already has." "No, not yet." Sarah reached for a glass of water from a passing tray. Not champagne, not tonight. She took one sip, then lowered the glass. A few feet away, Daniel was speaking to someone he clearly wasn't listening to. His posture remained straight, but his attention kept breaking. Once toward the reception doors, once toward the last row of chairs, then finally, toward her. Sarah held his gaze for exactly 1 second, then looked away first, not out of weakness, out of choice. That unsettled him more. She saw it in how quickly he ended the conversation in front of him. A nod, a short reply, then movement. He was coming. Good. Let him do the walking. Sarah turned slightly toward the column, setting her glass on a nearby side table. Her hands were free when he reached her. Can we talk? Daniel asked. No greeting, no attempt at softness, straight to it. Sarah looked at him from head to toe once. Tailored suit. Controlled face. A man trying very hard to look like nothing had slipped. You're talking, she said. His jaw shifted. Not here. She glanced around them. You got married in public. This isn't the same. No, she said. It isn't. A beat passed. His voice lowered. Please. Sarah studied him for a moment, then nodded toward a side corridor leading away from the main reception space. Walk. He looked at her, almost surprised by the tone. Then he turned and led the way. The corridor was quieter, still elegant, still carefully lit, but away from the guests and the constant movement of the room. At the far end, near a closed set of double doors, Daniel stopped and turned to face her. Sarah remained standing where she was, leaving a few feet between them. He noticed that too. For a second, neither spoke. Then Daniel exhaled slowly. You shouldn't have come. Sarah almost smiled. That's your first sentence? He looked away briefly, then back at her. I'm serious. So am I. This was never supposed to turn into a scene. Sarah lifted one brow. Interesting choice of words. You know what I mean. No, she said. I know what you're trying to mean. That's different. He rubbed a hand once over his mouth, then let it drop. I wanted to tell you earlier, but you didn't. I was trying to figure out the right way. Sarah gave a short nod. And you landed on a phone call. His silence told on him again. That was becoming a pattern. He tried another angle. It wasn't sudden. No, Sarah replied. It wasn't. Something in his expression tightened. Then you understand it was complicated. She let that sit between them for a moment before answering. What exactly was complicated, Daniel? He opened his mouth, then stopped. Sarah stepped a little closer. Not enough to close the distance, just enough to make her next words land harder. Choosing? She asked. Lying? Hiding it? Or deciding I should hear your engagement news like a scheduling update? His voice came lower now. That's not fair. That earned him an actual smile. Small, sharp, brief. Fair? He frowned. You know what I mean. No. But you keep hoping I'll help you say it better. He looked at her like he was searching for the version of Sarah he understood. The one who made room. The one who softened. The one who helped difficult moments become manageable. She let him search. He wasn't going to find her. I didn't do this to hurt you, he said at last. Sarah's face did not change, but something in her eyes did. Men say that, she replied, when they want credit for damage control. That's not what this is. Then what is it? He took a breath. It happened. No, she said immediately. Rain happens. Traffic happens. This took planning. He went still. Sarah continued, voice even, precise. You met her more than once. He said nothing. You spoke long enough for this to become a decision. Nothing. You kept showing up in my apartment while building a future somewhere else. His eyes dropped for the first time. There it was. Not guilt, exactly. Recognition. Good. She wanted him to hear it without escape. I'm not asking for details, Sarah said. I'm not asking for your conscience to perform for me. I'm telling you what happened. He swallowed once. I know I handled it badly. She gave a quiet, disbelieving breath. That is the most generous version of this I've heard all week. His expression hardened slightly. So what do you want from me? At that, Sarah became very still. Not because the question surprised her, because it clarified everything. Even now, standing here after marrying her sister, he still believed this moment was about her request, her reaction, her demand, Something he could answer and move past. That was the center of him, wasn't it? Management, containment, control. Sarah tilted her head. You really still think I came here wanting something from you? He didn't answer. The silence stretched. Then she stepped closer again, close enough now that he had to focus fully on her. I came because you invited me to witness your choice, she said. So I did. Her voice stayed calm. That made it worse. I watched you stand there. He looked at her, but didn't interrupt. I watched her hold those flowers too tightly. A flicker in his face. I watched you say vows while checking whether I was still in the room. His eyes changed at that. Not anger. Exposure. She saw it and kept going. You weren't marrying in peace, Daniel. You were performing in discomfort. He drew in a slow breath. You think you know what tonight was? I know enough. You don't know everything. I don't need everything. That landed harder than if she had raised her voice. He looked past her for a second, toward the far end of the corridor, then back. You're trying to make this sound simple. No, Sarah said. You are. I'm just refusing to help. For the first time, he looked tired. Not physically. Structurally, like something in the version of himself he relied on had started to give way. Sarah, he said, quieter now. I did love you. She held his gaze, then answered with brutal steadiness. And still, this is what you did. No anger, no tears, just fact. That was the sentence that finally removed somewhere for him to stand. His shoulders shifted, not much, but enough. The control was slipping. The corridor felt smaller now, or maybe the truth had just filled it. He tried once more. I never wanted you humiliated. Sarah gave him a long look. Then she said, and yet you mailed it. He had no answer to that. Of course he didn't. She let the silence sit for one beat, two, then stepped back, distance restored, position regained. When she spoke again, her tone had changed. Less personal, more final. You should go back inside, she said. Your guests are waiting. His eyes narrowed slightly. That's it? Sarah smoothed one side of her dress, not because it needed fixing, but because the gesture reminded them both who was composed now. No, she said, that's the beginning. He stared at her. She let him, then she added, very softly, you thought this room would reduce me. It didn't. And there it was. The shift, not loud, not theatrical, but irreversible. Because in that corridor, away from the audience he thought would protect him, Daniel understood something too late. Sarah was no longer standing inside the damage. She was standing above it. She turned first, walked back toward the reception space with measured steps, leaving him where he stood. Behind her, he didn't call her name. He didn't stop her. He couldn't. And when Sarah re-entered the reception room, the noise returned around her. But differently now. The room had not changed. She had, and somewhere in that same space, where music played and glasses touched and people pretended not to watch too closely, the balance had already begun to move. When Sarah stepped back into the reception room, the atmosphere had changed again. Not loudly, not enough for anyone to announce it, but enough for her to feel the difference. Before the corridor, the room had been watching her. Now it was measuring her. Guests held glasses they were no longer drinking from. Conversations resumed, but unevenly. Smiles appeared at the right times and disappeared too quickly. Music drifted through the room, elegant and polished, but it could not smooth what had already happened. Sarah moved past a cluster of round tables dressed in white linen and gold-trimmed glassware. She did not rush. She did not linger. She walked with the same purpose she brought into every room she entered for work, seeing everything without appearing to search for anything. That habit served her now. The reception layout was clean, expensive, and efficient. Dance floor centered, bar to the left, private lounge seating set further back near a darker section of the room. Staff moved in practiced lines, never colliding, never hesitating. Whoever had planned this evening understood rhythm. But something else in the room felt separate from the wedding itself. Not part of the guests, not part of the service, not part of the celebration. Sarah noticed it first as a pattern, not a face, a pattern, a shift in behavior at the edges of the room. One server slowed near the back entrance, then corrected course the moment someone near the far wall looked his way. Two men standing by a column did not drink, did not speak much, and did not seem interested in the couple at all. A woman near the bar laughed with the guests around her, but her eyes moved through the room too carefully for someone attending for pleasure. Sarah's gaze passed over them and moved on, then came back, not long enough to attract attention, just long enough to confirm what she felt. There was structure here beyond the wedding, and it was organized around someone. She reached the bar and asked for water. The bartender nodded and placed a glass in front of her. "Quiet night for a wedding," he said. Sarah lifted the glass. "That depends on where you're standing." He almost smiled, then thought better of it. "Fair point." She turned slightly, leaning one elbow against the bar, and took a slow sip. From here, she could see the bride, surrounded by guests near the center of the room. Smiles, air kisses, controlled laughter. Daniel stood beside her, one hand at the small of her back, answering congratulations with the polished ease of a man trained to survive rooms like this. But even now, he was distracted. He kept checking the room, not only for Sarah this time, for something else. Interesting. Sarah lowered the glass. Across the room, in the darker lounge section, one chair remained occupied while the others around it had changed hands twice already. People drifted near it, spoke briefly, then moved away. No one crowded too close. No one stayed longer than necessary. The person sitting there remained mostly in shadow from where she stood. Not hidden, just not displayed. That was different. People who wanted to be seen stood under light. People with power often didn't need to. Sarah looked away before the act of looking became visible. A woman brushed past her on the way to the bar and said without preamble, "You're handling this better than I would." Sarah kept her eyes on the room. "That sounds like a low standard." The woman let out a short laugh. "Maybe." Then, lowering her voice, "Still. Most people would have caused a scene by now." Sarah finally turned toward her. That would have made tonight easier for them. The woman blinked once, caught off guard, then nodded slowly. "Right." She took her drink and left. Sarah set her glass down untouched after that. She was no longer interested in drinking anything. Her instincts had fully awakened now, the same way they did before a client meltdown or a last-minute venue problem. Except this was different. This feeling wasn't about event pressure. It was about being assessed. The awareness came gradually, then all at once. Someone had been watching her for longer than a passing guest would, not staring, tracking. When she moved from the bar to the edge of the dance floor, she felt it. When she paused beside a floral installation near the reception tables, she felt it again. When she stepped toward the back of the room where the sound softened and the guest traffic thinned, the sensation became sharper. She stopped near a mirrored wall and adjusted her bracelet. Not because it needed adjusting, but because the reflection gave her another angle on the room. There, the darker lounge section again, the occupied chair, still there. A man approached that area, bent slightly as if to speak, then straightened the moment he got his answer and left. No wasted movement. No familiarity displayed, only deference. Sarah's expression did not change, but her attention narrowed. This was no ordinary guest, and whoever it was had noticed her. Not the way curious people noticed, not the way scandal-fed guests noticed. Differently, deliberately. A voice came from behind her. "Enjoying the reception?" Sarah turned. It was one of the wedding guests, smiling too brightly, carrying champagne and discomfort. "I've attended warmer funerals," Sarah replied. The woman nearly choked on her own laugh. "You really are something." "So I've been told." "Well," the woman said, glancing toward the center of the room. "They're about to start the first dance." Sarah followed her line of sight. The lighting had shifted subtly, guiding attention toward the dance floor. Staff adjusted the perimeter. Music lowered, then paused. The woman leaned closer. "If I were you, I'd leave before that." Sarah looked at her calmly. "If you were me, you would have arrived earlier." The woman had no answer to that. She drifted away with the others. The first notes of the dance music began. Guests gathered. Phones appeared in hands. Daniel and the bride moved into position. Sarah stayed exactly where she was, just outside the crowd forming around the floor. And as she watched them step into their first dance, she felt it again, clearer than before. That unseen attention, not emotional, not sympathetic, interested. Her eyes lifted beyond the dance floor, past the guests, toward the darker section of the room. The occupied chair was no longer emptying around itself. Now the space near it was clear, intentionally clear, and for the briefest moment, a hand resting against the arm of the chair shifted once, as if in acknowledgement of something only one person in the room had properly recognized. Sarah did not react, but inside, a new understanding took shape. Tonight was no longer only about betrayal. Something else had entered the story, something patient, something powerful, and whatever it was, it had not spent the evening watching the bride, or Daniel. It had spent the evening watching her. The first dance ended to generous applause, not heartfelt, practiced, the kind guests offered when they wanted the room to return to normal, even when everyone knew it wouldn't. Sarah stayed near the edge of the reception floor, long enough to let the crowd close in around the couple again. Champagne rose, phones lowered, music changed. Conversations restarted, with forced brightness. She had seen enough, not of Daniel, not of the bride, of the room. She turned toward the exit corridor that led back through the main lobby. Her pace was even, neither hurried nor hesitant. She did not announce her departure. She did not look back. A server passed with a tray. Someone laughed too loudly near the bar. A guest near the floral wall whispered, "She's leaving," as if reporting weather. Good. Let them think that. Sarah made it halfway across the reception space before a voice behind her called out, low but urgent, "Sarah." She stopped, not because the voice moved her, because it irritated her. She turned. Daniel was coming toward her, one hand already loosening at his jacket, as though the evening had suddenly grown too tight around him. Up close, he looked less polished than he had at the altar. Still presentable, still controlled, but thinner in it now, as if control required more effort than before. "I need a minute," he said. Sarah gave him a neutral look. "You already took one. This is different." "No," she said. "This is the consequence of the last one." He glanced past her toward the watching guests, then lowered his voice. "Can you not do this here?" Sarah almost smiled. "That sentence keeps getting funnier." "I'm serious." "So am I." He stepped closer, forcing his tone softer. "Just listen. I have listened all night. That's not fair. Neither was mailing me a seat to your wedding." His jaw tightened. The problem with men like Daniel, Sarah thought, was not that they lied badly. It was that they expected calm women to make lying easier to absorb. He looked over her shoulder again, too aware of the audience, too aware of who was watching. Sarah followed that instinct, without moving her head. Yes. Several guests had stopped pretending not to look. The bride, still near the center of the room, had noticed too. Her smile had faded at the edges. Good. Let this room work harder than it planned to. Daniel tried again. "I don't want this turning ugly." Sarah's eyes returned to him. That concern arrived late. His voice sharpened. "What do you want me to say?" "There it is again," she said quietly. "You keep acting like this is a speech problem." He let out a slow breath and rubbed once at his temple. For a second, he looked less like a groom and more like a man trying to contain a problem before it became expensive. Then the bride began moving toward them, not quickly, too careful for that, but directly. Of course she couldn't stay away. She stopped at Daniel's side, chin lifted, smile restored, but strained around the eyes. "You're leaving?" she asked Sarah. The question was dressed like courtesy. The tone was not. Sarah looked at her for a measured second. That was the plan. The bride folded her hands lightly in front of her. "You made your point." "Interesting." Sarah let that hang. "My point?" "Yes," the bride said. "You came. You sat through the ceremony. Everyone saw you. What else are you trying to do?" The pressure around them shifted. Nearby guests pretended to busy themselves with drinks and napkins, while listening with full attention. Daniel said quietly, "Not now." The bride ignored him. "I'm asking respectfully," she continued, still facing Sarah. "What exactly do you want from tonight?" Sarah almost laughed. There it was again. That assumption that she had come wanting something, that every woman in pain must be aiming for reaction, apology, or spectacle. She answered without heat, You really both think tonight is about what I want." The bride's expression tightened. "Then what is this?" "This," Sarah said, glancing once around the room, "is what happens when people confuse invitation with permission." The bride went still. Daniel stepped in. Voice clipped now. "Enough." Sarah turned her head slowly to him. "You don't get to say that to me." The bride's composure slipped first. A small thing. A flash around the mouth. A shift in the shoulders. But Sarah saw it. Then came the line the bride should not have said. "You could have stayed home," she said. The words were soft, almost reasonable, which made them worse. Sarah looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," she said, "and you could have stayed human." The silence after that was immediate. Clean. A few feet away, a guest set down a glass too hard against a table. Daniel stepped forward. "Stop." "No," Sarah replied. He lowered his voice further. "You're making a scene." That word finally did it. Not because she feared it, because it exposed him completely. Sarah's eyes sharpened. "I walked into a room where my husband married my sister, and your concern is scene management?" The bride glanced around, now visibly aware of how many people were no longer even pretending not to hear. "This is inappropriate," she said. Sarah gave her a level look. So was the invitation. The bride drew breath to answer, but stopped, because something had changed in the room. Not volume, not lighting, position. The air near them shifted first as several guests subtly moved out of the way without being asked. A server, who had been approaching with a tray, changed direction. The crowd along one side of the dance floor opened with unnatural speed, like fabric being pulled straight. Daniel noticed it too. So did the bride. Sarah did not turn immediately. She felt it before she saw it. That same presence from earlier, closer now, not hurried, not loud, but impossible to ignore. The bride's eyes moved past Sarah, and for the first time all evening, real uncertainty entered her face. Daniel straightened, then straightened again, as though instinct told him posture mattered more than ever now. Only then did Sarah turn. The darker section of the room was no longer distant. The center of its gravity had moved. A figure approached with two men a half step behind, not crowding, not speaking. Guests did not greet him. They yielded. No announcement, no introduction, none needed. Sarah's pulse did not rise, but her focus sharpened to a point. The figure stopped just within conversational distance, close enough to alter the balance, far enough to make it clear he chose distance, not uncertainty. He looked first at Sarah, not her dress, not the argument, her. Then his gaze moved to Daniel, and the room seemed to lose temperature. No one spoke for a second. Then one of the men behind him addressed Daniel with quiet precision. "Sir, you're needed elsewhere." It was not a suggestion. Daniel's face changed slightly. Not fear exactly. Recognition with discomfort wrapped around it. "We're in the middle of something," he replied. The man did not blink. Not anymore. The bride looked from Daniel to the figure, then back again. "What is this?" No one answered her. That told Sarah more than an explanation would have. Daniel tried to recover the room. "This is a private event." The figure's gaze returned to him. Calm, unmoved. Then, for the first time, he spoke. Only 4 words. Clearly, it is not. The sentence landed harder than raised voices would have. Something immediate happened after that. The bride stepped back. Daniel did not notice until she was already half a pace behind him. Guests lowered their eyes. And Sarah, standing at the center of a moment that had been designed to humiliate her, realized the structure of the room had just changed. Not by emotion, by authority. The figure turned his attention to her again. Not warm, not personal, measured, as if confirming something he had suspected all evening. Then he inclined his head, just slightly. A gesture so controlled it nearly disappeared. But Sarah saw it. Not comfort, not rescue, recognition. The man behind him spoke once more, this time to Sarah. "Ma'am, your car will be brought to the front." The bride stared. Daniel looked like he wanted to object, and understood he shouldn't. Sarah held the silence for 1 beat longer. Then she answered, "Thank you." Simple, clean, no confusion, no need. She turned before anyone else could speak. and began walking toward the lobby. No one blocked her path. No one called her name. Behind her, the reception did not collapse. It did something more interesting. It rearranged itself around power that had not been invited, but had clearly been expected by the right people. And Sarah understood, as she crossed from the wedding space into the quieter lobby beyond, that tonight had just moved beyond betrayal. Someone had stepped into the story, someone important, and for reasons she did not yet understand, that someone had chosen to step in for her. The lobby was quieter than the reception, not silent, just controlled. Footsteps softened against polished floors. Conversations stayed low. Staff moved with the same precision as before, but here it felt less like performance and more like discipline. Sarah stepped forward, away from the noise behind her. The double doors to the reception closed. The music faded, and for the first time that night, there was space to think. She didn't rush outside, didn't immediately reach for her phone, didn't look back. She stopped near the center of the lobby, stood still, let the moment settle. The words from the corridor replayed in her mind. The confrontation, Daniel's tone, the bride's expression, the way the room shifted. Then, the interruption, not loud, not chaotic, precise. Sarah exhaled slowly. There was only one question that mattered now, not what happened, but why it happened. Waiting usually means you expect something. The voice came from behind her, calm, measured. Sarah didn't turn immediately. She recognized the tone, not because she had heard it before, because she understood it. She turned. He stood a few steps away, no longer surrounded by a crowd, no longer positioned in shadow, now fully visible. Tailored suit, clean lines, no excess movement. Everything about him suggested control without effort. The two men from before stood further back, far enough to give space, close enough to act. Sarah faced him fully. "You followed me," she said. "No," he replied. "I arrived where you were going." That answer was deliberate. Sarah noticed. She studied him, not as a threat, not as a distraction, as a variable. "Then say what you came to say," she said. A brief pause, not hesitation, consideration. "I wanted to see if you would leave," he said. Sarah's expression didn't change. "And? You didn't," he replied. "Not immediately," she corrected. "That's the difference," he said. Sarah held his gaze. "You interfered." "I corrected the direction of a moment," he said. "That wasn't your moment," she replied. Another pause. "No," he said. "It became mine." That was the first honest answer. Sarah recognized it instantly. She folded her arms loosely. "You expect me to believe that was random? I expect you to understand it wasn't," he said. "Good. No pretending. No unnecessary explanation." Sarah stepped slightly to the side, increasing the space between them, not retreating, repositioning. "You've been watching me," she said. "Yes." No denial. "For how long?" she asked. "The entire evening." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Before the ceremony?" A small pause, then, "Yes." That confirmed it. Sarah let the silence sit for a moment, not to create tension, to organize information. "You weren't interested in the wedding," she said. "No." Or them. "No. Just me." "Yes." The clarity of it removed any need for guessing. Sarah walked past him slowly, toward the large window overlooking the street. The city outside moved without pause. Cars passed. People crossed. Life continued. Behind her, he didn't follow immediately. That told her something else. He wasn't trying to control her movement. Good. She turned back. Why? This time. He didn't answer immediately, not because he didn't have an answer, because he chose how to deliver it. "You stayed," he said. "That's not an answer." "It is," he replied. Sarah's voice remained steady. "No. That's an observation." A slight shift in his expression, not irritation, adjustment. "You stayed when leaving would have been easier," he said. "You didn't interrupt the ceremony. You didn't ask for explanation. You didn't collapse." He stepped closer now, not into her space. Near it, "You watched," he continued. Sarah's eyes remained fixed on him. "That still doesn't explain you." "It explains why you matter," he said. That landed differently, not emotionally, strategically. Sarah tilted her head slightly. You select people based on how they behave under pressure. Yes, there it was. You're not here because of what happened, she said. You're here because of how I handled it. Yes. No hesitation. Sarah exhaled slowly. Now the structure became clearer. You weren't protecting me, she said. No. You were observing. Yes. And then you stepped in. Yes. Why? This time, the answer came without pause. Because it was time. Sarah studied him carefully. That still doesn't tell me who you are, she said. A brief silence. Then, it doesn't need to. That was the line. The one that defined everything. Not arrogance. Not avoidance. Position. Sarah understood immediately. He wasn't introducing himself. Because introduction wasn't required where he came from. Her next words were deliberate. You carry authority in a room that isn't yours. Yes. You give instructions without raising your voice. Yes. You don't explain yourself. No. That confirmed it. Sarah nodded once. You're not business. No. You're not security. No. A small pause. Then she said it plainly. You're connected to something organized. A slight shift in his gaze. Not denial. Not confirmation. Acceptance. That's one way to describe it, he said. Sarah didn't push further. She didn't need the exact label. She understood the structure. And tonight, she said, you decided I was worth stepping into the middle of it. Yes. Why me? This time, he answered differently. Because you didn't ask for anything, he said. Sarah's expression remained unchanged. Most people in that room were negotiating position. He continued, respect, image, control, a beat. You weren't. Sarah folded her arms again. I was observing, she said. Exactly, he replied. Silence settled between them. Not heavy, not uncertain. Defined. Then he spoke again. You were chosen the moment you walked in, he said. That was the reveal. Not dramatic, not loud. Final. Sarah didn't react outwardly, but internally. Everything aligned. The watching, the timing, the intervention. It wasn't spontaneous. It was decided. She held his gaze. And now? She asked. A small pause. Now, he said. We see what you do next. Not an offer. Not a request. A statement. Sarah considered that, not emotionally, strategically, because, for the first time that night, the situation in front of her wasn't about loss. It was about direction. Her car pulled up outside, the door visible through the glass, engine running, waiting. She glanced toward it, then back at him. You interrupted a situation you didn't create, she said. Yes. You changed its outcome. Yes. And now, you expect me to continue from there. Yes. Sarah nodded once. Then she stepped past him, paused at the door, turned slightly, and said the only thing that made sense now. I don't repeat mistakes. A brief silence. Then, good, he said. Sarah opened the door, stepped outside. The night air met her again. Cool, clear, different from when she arrived. Behind her. The lobby remained. The man remained. The shift remained. And for the first time since the story began, Sarah wasn't reacting to what she lost. She was stepping into what had just found her. The car door closed with a quiet, expensive sound. Sarah settled into the back seat and looked straight ahead. For the first few blocks, neither she nor the driver spoke. That suited her. Outside, New York moved the way it always did. Fast, indifferent, alive. Streetlights cut across the glass. Storefronts flashed by. People stood at corners, half in conversation, half in motion. Cabs edged through traffic. A delivery bike slipped between lanes with the confidence of someone who trusted no one else to make space. Usually, the city felt familiar to Sarah. Tonight, it felt rearranged. Not because the streets had changed, because she had. Her fingers rested lightly on the envelope still in her bag. The wedding invitation she had brought without admitting to herself that she might need it. She did not take it out. She did not look at it. That chapter had already done what it came to do. The car turned downtown. then moved into a quieter stretch where the buildings changed character. Less charm, more authority, taller facades, dark glass, discreet entrances, places that did not need signs to announce importance. Sarah noticed everything. Habit. The same habit that once helped her read a room before a client arrived, now helped her read this one before she entered it. The car slowed in front of a building that looked less like a residence and more like a decision made in stone and steel. Clean entrance. No wasted decoration. Lighting placed to guide, not impress. Two men near the doorway, not stiff like guards trying to look intimidating, but still in a way that made other people keep moving. The driver stepped out first and opened her door. "We're here," he said. Sarah looked up at the building, then at him. "Am the first expected?" "Yes." No over-explaining. That tracked. She got out, adjusted her bag on her shoulder, and let her eyes move over the doorway one more time. She had entered luxury hotels, private event halls, and penthouse venues before. She knew the difference between money that wanted attention and power that no longer needed it. This was the second kind. Inside, the lobby was quiet and sharply designed. Dark floors polished to a low shine. A long desk near the far wall. Artwork chosen with restraint. Nothing crowded, nothing casual. Sarah walked forward at an even pace. A man near the desk looked at her once, then stepped aside without asking her name. So this had been arranged. Good. She preferred clarity. A private elevator opened before she reached it. No one announced anything. No one gestured dramatically. The doors simply opened, and one of the men from the wedding stepped into view. "This way," he said. Sarah entered the elevator without comment. As the doors closed, she caught her reflection in the mirrored interior. Same dress, same face, same woman. But the energy had changed. At the wedding, people looked at her to see if she would fall. Here, nobody seemed interested in whether she could survive the room. The assumption was that survival was already settled. The elevator doors opened onto a floor that felt less like an office and more like a controlled world built above the city. Wide hallway, low lighting, doors placed far apart. Quiet that came from design, not emptiness. She was led into a large room lined with windows. The city spread below like a living map. At the center of the room sat a long table with nothing unnecessary on it. No stacks of paper, no decorative clutter, no performance of busyness, just order. The man from the wedding stood near the windows, hands behind his back, looking out over the city as if it had already answered every question he intended to ask. He turned when she entered. Again, no smile. Again, no needless welcome. But tonight, there was no distance created by a crowd, a ballroom, or other people pretending not to notice him. Now the room belonged to his presence completely. Sarah stopped a few feet from the table. "You move quickly," she said. "I dislike wasted time," he replied. She glanced once around the room. That much is obvious. His eyes held hers for a brief moment. Not amusement. Something close to approval. "You came," he said. "You sent a car. I wasn't asking about transportation." Sarah set her bag down on the table. Not carelessly, not timidly. "I don't like unfinished conversations." "This is not a conversation. What is it?" "A change in position." That line might have sounded theatrical from someone else. From him, it sounded like policy. Sarah studied him. "Mine?" "Yes." He moved toward the table and stopped at the opposite side. The distance between them felt deliberate. Not avoidance. Structure. "You were comfortable before," he said. Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly. "Comfortable? In your world," he replied. "Predictable clients, controlled environments, emotional labor dressed as elegance." The description landed harder because part of it was true. She did not let that show. "I built that world," she said. "Yes. And you say that, like it's small." "No," he said. "I say it like it prepared you badly for betrayal and perfectly for this." That was the first sentence that made her shift internally. Not because it flattered her, because it was exact. Event planning had trained her to do what most people fail to do under pressure: watch, interpret, adjust, recover, without displaying strain. She had spent years turning fragile moments into polished outcomes for people who often did not deserve the effort. And now, standing in this room, she understood the difference. In her old world, emotional control kept other people comfortable. In this one, emotional control had currency. You chose me because I didn't break in public, she said. I chose you because you understood the room before the room understood you. He said it without softness, which made it more valuable. Sarah let the silence sit between them. Then she asked, chosen for what? This time, he walked toward the windows, then turned back, as if the city itself were part of the answer. For access, he said. Her face remained neutral. To what? To rooms where people lie with confidence. To moments where truth is never spoken directly. To decisions hidden under etiquette, money, and fear. Sarah looked at him carefully now. Not as a stranger, as a structure. This was not romance, not rescue, not chance. This was recognition with purpose attached to it. And you think I belong in those rooms? No, he said. That answer came too fast to misunderstand. Then he finished it. I think you already do. You've just been entering through the wrong door. That one changed something, not her expression, her posture. She straightened slightly, not out of defensiveness, but because her mind had just moved ahead of the moment. From apartment kitchens and event calls, from polite clients and expensive weddings, from pain into position. She looked back at the city through the windows, then at the room, then at him. Nothing about this world resembled the life she had built in Brooklyn, and yet something in it made immediate sense. Not morally, structurally, the rules were harder here, but at least they were honest about being hard. In her old life, people smiled while using her. In this one, the danger stood in plain view. Oddly, that felt cleaner. What happens next? She asked. He held her gaze. That, he said, depends on whether you prefer being invited into rooms or controlling what happens inside them. Sarah did not answer immediately. She didn't need to, because for the first time since Daniel's phone call, the future in front of her did not look like recovery. It looked like leverage, and that difference was everything. Proceed to Part 2. Proceed to Part 2. Chapter 5, Part 2. Daniel's realization. Approximately 1,080 words or direct continuation, or dialogue-driven, or regret, arc, plus rejection, or no repetition, or strict consistency. The next time Daniel saw her, it wasn't planned, and that unsettled him more than anything else that had happened since the wedding. 3 days had passed. 3 days of noise, calls, messages, questions disguised as congratulations. Business associates who smiled too much, people who spoke carefully, as if something had shifted but no one wanted to name it. The wedding had been completed, documented, shared, accepted, but not settled. Daniel noticed it in small ways first. A delayed response from someone who never delayed, a conversation that ended sooner than expected. A look held half a second longer than it should have been. He understood rooms. He always had, and right now, the room was no longer responding to him the same way. That was the first sign. The second was harder to ignore. He was in a private meeting room, standing near the window, when the conversation across the table paused unexpectedly. Not because of what he said, because of who had just entered the building. He didn't see her at first. He felt it, the shift. Then one of the men in the room glanced toward the door, just once. Enough to confirm it. Daniel turned, and there she was. Sarah, not in her apartment, not in her usual environment, not in the version of her he had known. Here, she walked through the space with the same measured pace, but everything around her reacted differently. No hesitation from staff, no questioning looks, no quiet judgment. Access, immediate, unchallenged. That was what hit him first. Not how she looked, not what she wore, where she was allowed to be. His conversation stopped entirely now. The other man in the room followed his gaze, then adjusted his posture slightly, as if recalibrating something invisible. Daniel stepped away from the table without explaining. For the first time in a long time, he didn't control the timing of the room. He moved toward the hallway, toward her. Sarah. She stopped, turned, no surprise in her face. That told him everything. You didn't expect to see me? She asked. Daniel studied her carefully. You're here. She tilted her head slightly. Yes, that's not what I meant. I know. A brief silence passed. Daniel stepped closer, lowered his voice. What are you doing here? Sarah held his gaze. Working. That answer didn't make sense to him. Not in this context. Not in this place. With who? He asked. Sarah's expression didn't change. That's not your question to ask anymore. That landed. Direct. Clean. He exhaled slowly. Sarah, this isn't your world. That almost made her smile. No, she said. It wasn't. He caught the difference immediately. Past tense. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. You're making a mistake. Sarah shook her head once. No. I made one already. A pause. I'm not repeating it. That line stayed between them longer than expected. Daniel stepped even closer now. Close enough that the conversation belonged only to them. You don't understand what you're stepping into, he said. Sarah's response came without delay. Neither did I, when I trusted you. That stopped him. For a moment, he didn't have anything prepared. Then he tried again. Different angle. This isn't about us, he said. Sarah looked at him calmly. You're right. That answer disoriented him more than resistance would have, because now, there was no emotional doorway back into the conversation. I'm serious, he continued. This is not something you just walk into. Sarah's voice stayed level, and yet, here I am. Another silence. Daniel studied her again, longer this time. Something had changed, not just in her words, in her position. She wasn't reacting to him anymore. She wasn't trying to understand him. She wasn't asking anything. That absence of need. That was new. And that was what unsettled him. You could have walked away, he said quietly. Sarah nodded once. I did. That's not what this looks like. That's because you're still looking at it from your side. His voice lowered further. I'm trying to help you. That earned him a look. Not anger. Not pain. Clarity. You didn't help me when it mattered, she said. A small pause. You don't get to start now. That was the moment the regret became visible. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. Daniel looked away briefly, then back at her. I made a decision, he said. Sarah nodded. Yes, and I know how it looks. You don't, she said. That stopped him again. She stepped slightly to the side, creating space. You know how it felt for you, she continued. You don't know how it looked from where I was standing. He didn't interrupt. You think this is about betrayal, she said. It's not. A pause. It's about replacement. That word landed heavier than anything else she had said. Daniel's expression shifted, subtle, but undeniable. I didn't replace you, he said. Sarah held his gaze. You married my sister. Silence. Nothing else needed to be said. The truth didn't require decoration. He exhaled slowly. I didn't expect it to go like this. Sarah gave a small, almost reflective nod. Neither did I. Another pause. Then, he asked the question that revealed everything. Is there any way back from this? Sarah looked at him for a long moment, not emotionally, not reactively, objectively. Then she answered, no. No hesitation, no softness, no opening. Final. Daniel absorbed that, and for the first time, there was nothing left for him to adjust, explain, or control. Sarah stepped back fully now, distance restored. I hope it was worth it, she said, not sarcastic, not bitter, just honest. Then she turned and walked away. No pause, no looking back, and this time, Daniel didn't follow, because now he understood something he hadn't before. He hadn't just lost her. He had lost access, and there was no way back into that. By the time Sarah reached the elevator, her breathing had settled, not because the conversation with Daniel had meant nothing, because it had finally meant the right thing. An ending, not the kind people cry over for months because they keep reopening it in private, a real one, clear enough to stand on. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside alone and watched the mirrored walls catch her reflection from 3 different angles. Same dress, same face, but no hesitation left in it now. The doors closed, and the city descended around her in silence. When the elevator opened again, the lobby below looked exactly the same as before. Clean, quiet, carefully managed. But Sarah no longer entered spaces the way she had a week ago. Before, she had entered rooms with awareness. Now she entered with position. That was different. She crossed the lobby without slowing. A man near the entrance glanced up, saw her, and immediately straightened. No questions, no delay. The door opened before she reached it. Outside, the late afternoon air carried a light chill. Traffic moved in clean bursts. The city remained busy, unconcerned, alive. Sarah stood on the sidewalk for a moment and looked up at the glass above her. A few days ago, her world had been small enough to break. An apartment in Brooklyn, clients, schedules, deliveries, private events, carefully arranged rooms where she helped other people hold on to meaning. There had been dignity in that life. There still was, but she could see it clearly now. She had spent years mastering emotional control in service of people who often did not deserve access to it. She had made broken moments look graceful. She had translated tension into elegance. She had helped people feel secure inside promises they were not always prepared to keep. And all that time, she thought her discipline was simply part of survival. She understood better now. It was power. She had just been using it too cheaply. Her phone buzzed in her bag. She didn't rush for it. When she finally took it out, the screen lit with Daniel's name. No message. Just a call. Sarah looked at it ring once, twice, then she answered, "What?" There was a pause on the other end, as if even now he was still adjusting to the fact that softness no longer lived here for him. "I know I don't have a right to ask for another conversation," he said. "That's true." A breath came through the line. "Then let me say this once." Sarah began walking, heels steady against the pavement. "You already said enough. Not this." She turned the corner and kept moving. "You have 10 seconds. Silence. Then his voice, lower now. "I was wrong." Sarah did not stop, not because she refused to hear it, because hearing it no longer required her full attention. "Yes," she said. No comfort, no reward for effort, just agreement. He seemed thrown by how quickly she accepted it. "I should have handled everything differently." Another corner, another block, city noise rising and falling around her. "Yes, I hurt you. Yes." A longer silence now. Then, "Why do you sound like none of this matters anymore?" That made her stop, not from emotion, from the stupidity of the question. She looked across the street, at a storefront window, reflecting traffic and sky. Then she answered, "It mattered enough to change me." Nothing came from him for a second. So she continued, "You keep thinking closure is supposed to sound soft, Daniel. It isn't." His voice dropped. "That's not what I meant. I know exactly what you meant." Her tone stayed even. "You want me to sound wounded, so you can feel necessary. That's not fair." Sarah smiled once, but there was no warmth in it. "You lost your right to complain about fairness." The line went quiet again. For the first time in their history, he was the one trying to catch up. Good. He needed to stay there. When he spoke again, the confidence was gone. Was any of it real? Sarah closed her eyes once, then opened them. That question deserved an answer. Not for him, for herself. "Yes," she said. His exhale was almost audible relief, but she ended it immediately. "It was real to me." The relief vanished. "That's not the same thing," he said. "No," Sarah replied. "It isn't." Now he understood, or at least began to. She had loved him honestly. That was never the mistake. Believing honesty would be matched, that had been the mistake. He said her name again, softer this time. "Sarah." "No." The word cut clean. "Listen carefully. I am not angry, because anger still asks something from the past. I'm done asking." He said nothing, so she gave him the last truth he would ever get from her. "You did not destroy me. You revealed the price of trusting the wrong people." Another long silence, then barely above a breath, "I wish I could undo it." Sarah looked up at the city around her. Tall buildings, moving lights, a future no longer arranged around damage. "That's your burden," she said. Not hers. His. She ended the call before he could answer. This time, she did not stare at the phone afterward. She put it away and kept walking. By evening, she was back in Brooklyn, back to the apartment with the plants near the window. the familiar lighting, the kitchen that had once held the moment her life split in two. Everything remained where it had always been, but nothing felt the same. She set her bag down, removed her shoes, walked to the window. The city outside glowed against the darkening sky. For a long moment, she simply stood there. Then her eyes moved to the shelf where the wedding invitation had sat. She crossed the room, took the envelope in her hand, and opened it one last time. The same expensive paper, the same careful print, the same polished cruelty. She read the words without reaction now. Date, time, place, invitation, attendance requested. As if what they had done could be framed by typography and become respectable. Sarah folded the paper back into the envelope and held it for a second longer. Then she walked to the kitchen, opened a drawer, took out a lighter, held the corner of the invitation over the sink. The flame caught slowly, then spread with quiet certainty across the paper. She watched until the last edge curled into ash. No speech, no tears, no dramatic release, just completion. When it was done, she washed the ash away and dried her hands. Then she returned to the window, and this time, when she looked at her reflection in the glass, she recognized the woman staring back. Not because pain had disappeared, because pain had been placed where it belonged. Behind her, her voice came low, steady, final. I didn't lose them. A pause, then the rest. They lost me. And that was the truth of it. Not every betrayal ends with collapse. Some betrayals strip away illusion. Some force you to see your value where you had once offered it too freely. Some close one door so completely that for the first time you notice the one opening beside it. Sarah stood there, shoulders straight, city light framing her reflection, and understood the lesson clearly. Silence is not surrender. Composure is not weakness. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the moment your life stops being shaped by other people's decisions. Outside, New York kept moving. Inside, Sarah did too. Not broken, not waiting. Chosen, yes, but more importantly than that, ready.